Hello and welcome. It's John from Double Sleeved here. And you are watching day 6 of the companion review. And today is Lutri. Lutri. One of the most controversial card releases of this set, because before we even got to properly see it, it had been taken away from us, at least in singleton formats, specifically Commander. And we'll get on to why. But we're not looking at that, we're looking at Standard today. And we're going to be straight form talking. There's going to be no beard cam, unfortunately, today. But I really appreciate the response to the previous video. But let's get on to it, come on. Lutri the Spell Chaser. What I'm going to do, I'm going to spin through the card. I'm going to throw through a few thoughts on some other cards, and I'll wrap up at the end. I don't want a long video, but hey, I say that every time. So Lutri the Spell Chaser is a 3/2 elemental otter. Now, I touched on this before when we released it. I love elementals, and I mean, it's an otter. You gotta like it. Ouch. For one, is it? Yes, it is. Companion. Each non-land card in your starting deck has a different name. I'll come back onto that in a minute. Flash. And when Lutri the Spell Chaser enters the battlefield, if you cast it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, you may choose new targets for the copy. So, we'll come on to some effects that do a similar thing to what Lutri does. But the basis of this, the reason it got banned in Companion, just to touch on that really quickly, is the Companion rules. Sorry, in Commander, it got banned in Commander. It is a Companion. The Companion rules are a way of restricting the benefit you get. So you have to adhere to a deck building restriction in order to get the benefit of having what is essentially an additional card. But not only an additional card, it's a card that can be played at any time because it's right there, as long as you obviously have the mana and it's appropriate for the card to be played. And it can't be interacted with until it hits the board. So it's kind of like everyone knows it's there, and they basically said that the restriction was you need a different card in... You need a whole deck full of different cards other than lands. Obviously in Commander and other singleton formats you have that anyway, so it's not really a restriction, and it basically said if you run blue or red, and blue being one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful colour in Commander in terms of its flexibility and its counter spelling, etc., there's no reason not to run it. That's basically what they said. So what we're looking at now is if it was a Standard perspective, is it the same? Do we think it's as good? And what benefits do you get? So straight away in this card you're getting a 3/2 with flash for 3 mana. That's pretty good. Like, it's not great. Again, same thing for these commanders is the actual base card isn't unbelievable. The ability to, when it enters a battlefield, if you cast it, copy a target instant or sorcery spell and then choose new targets. Now what that does is play some mind games, because if you've got this sat at the sideboard and you play a spell, either an instant or a sorcery, and you leave 3 mana open, what you're basically doing is saying, what you're going to do? You're going to counter it? You're going to wait? And in essence, what they can, if they don't respond and you say, okay, that spell is on the stack, I'm going to play Lutri, then they can choose to dispel Lutri, but you're going to get your first spell off potentially. It's a decent benefit, and we'll have a look at some other cards that have a similar benefit. But for a 3/2 flash that can copy a spell, I think is pretty good. The question is it worth? Is it worth the restriction? So quick bit of math. Who doesn't like math? Math fun. If you have, so normally you can have up to 4 of a kind of any card in your deck, obviously other than lands. The chance of you having a card in your opening hand of 7 cards, if you've got 4 of a kind, is almost 50%. Okay, it's 49% likelihood that if you've got 4 of a kind, that one of the 7 cards you've drawn is one of those 4 cards. That obviously drops to 12% if you've only got one card. So you draw, your most likely chance of you getting that card is in your opening hand, and there's only a 12% chance that you've got any of the cards in a Lutri deck in your hand. If you draw 9 more cards, so you're saying 9 turns, or you've got a bit of card draw in there somehow, the chance of you seeing a card, if you've only got one of each card, is 29%. So it is less likely, based on having a Lutri deck, to see a card at any point in the game than it is if you've got 4 of a kind in another deck in your opening hand. There are people out there that base entire strategies around seeing a certain card, run 4 of a kind of it in order that they definitely get that card at some point. You know, by turn 6 or 7, if you've got 4 of a kind, you should be seeing that. Card. If not earlier, if you've got card draw. So statistically, what Lutri is doing, which is in its definition very is-it-like, is creating this uncertainty and this potential chaos and causing a very unstable platform for you to play the game. Do I disagree with that? Do I dislike that? No. As a concept for fun, I'm all about that. As a concept for competitive play, I think you've got to be very clever with the way you build this deck. So the sort of cards we're looking at that can do a similar thing and can do things that will benefit from Lutri, you've got Expansion Explosion. Straight away, Expansion copies target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. You can choose new copies for the target. That's a 2 mana spell that is an instant. So it's 1 less, and just to put Lutri into perspective then, it's 1 less to do the same thing, but for Lutri you also get a 3/2. Seems pretty powerful in and of itself. However, you can have 4 Expansion Explosions in your deck if you're not running Lutri as your companion. So if it's an effect you like, is it worth running 4 of them? I don't know. You've got Crackling Drake, which benefits from the number of instants and sorceries in your deck. You've got Beam Splitter Mage. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Beam Splitter Mage, if you control 1 or more creatures that the spell could target, you choose one of those creatures and copy that spell. The copy targets the chosen creature. So basically you put a Beam Splitter Mage, which is a 2/2 for 2, and you have another creature next to it. You can bounce a spell and get double the benefit out of it. It's more specific, but it's a creature, benefits a creature, etc, etc. So yeah, a potentially powerful effect. Again, cards that work well: Goblin Electromancer, another Is-It card, another 2/2 for 2. Instant or sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's crazy. We know it's powerful. You're making a lot of spells easier to cast, which means you've got more of them, which means you can potentially copy more. League Guild Mage, which is another 2/2 for 2. X and red. You tap it and you can copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with converted mana cost X. You may choose new targets for the copy. So same thing, you need to invest a bit more mana potentially, but she's there. And the thing with something like an Is-It Guild Mage, you're drawing cards off of her. It's quite expensive, but you can. And you've got this potentially scalable copying repeatedly. It's not just a one-off, which if you need a bit more stability potentially is there. Niv Mizzet Payrun, or Payrun, it's 6 mana, but it is a 5/5 flyer that can't be countered itself. This one's all about when a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card, and when you draw a card it deals damage. So what this is doing is enabling additional instant sorcery spells, wanting more instant sorcery spells being cast, and getting you a bit of card draw in there. It's currently dominating Brawl in quite an unfun way by a lot of people's reckoning, because it is a pretty broken mechanic. When you get him out, it's 6 mana, it's quite a significant amount. But again, another card that could feature. 1,000 Years Storm, an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell cast before this one. in this turn, you may choose new targets for the copies. So what this one's doing is an enchantment that sits there, and as you copy things, Lutri comes out, copies a spell, you know, a bunch of the other mechanics we've seen. This is just going to be copying spells left, right and centre. This is the kind of game winner that can really make a huge difference. But again, the chances of seeing it in a Lutri deck, it's very hit or miss. Ral Storm Conduit. So this one, you can -2 when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So what I like about this one is when you cast your next instant or sorcery, so you can do this at the end of your second main phase and potentially cast an instant spell during the opponent's turn and then copy it. Same as with what Lutri would do, being flash, could be played any time and copy. So, and it's 4 mana for a planeswalker that's got 4 loyalty and can +2 to add 1. Plus, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to a target opponent or planeswalker. So Ral, I think, has got a lot of benefits too. You've got some new cards like Law Drakis, which whenever this creature mutates, return an instant or sorcery card from the graveyard to your hand. You're benefiting there, getting it out of the graveyard. Rael the Everwise. I'm calling her Rael. I don't know if that's a name, how it's pronounced, but another card that's seeing a lot of play and people are talking about being very powerful, and it's definitely got some powerful cards this time around. It is legendary, which again wouldn't matter if you've got a singleton based deck building premise. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards. Most importantly, she gets +1/0 for each instant sorcery card in your graveyard. So you're casting instant sorceries left, right and centre, and then Rael comes out and is a big threat for 3 mana. Sprite Dragon, probably one of the more adorable creatures. A 1/1 for 2 with flying and haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, instant sorcery, enchantment, planeswalker, whatever you want, put a 1/1 counter on Sprite Dragon. That, before you know it, is a big dragon. And then some other cards just to sort of keep you guessing. Whenever this is a Protean Thaumaturge, which is a 1/1 for 2 human wizard. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Protean Thaumaturge become a copy of another target creature, except it has this ability. What this is potentially doing is doubling up, getting you a bit of stability. Where you've only got 1 copy of something, this comes out suddenly. This is another copy of potentially whatever you want 2 copies of. Shark Typhoon, the Sharknado card that everyone is loving, one of the more powerful cards in the entire set. It's 6 mana enchantment, but whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. You cast a 1 mana spell, instant, sorcery, whatever, and you're getting a 1/1 flying shark. Do it again, that's another one. Do it again, that's another one. Unbelievable. And it has cycling, and when you cycle you get a shark token with flying. Great, just silly card, but I love it. God Eternal Kefnet, another card I was looking through, is a 4/5 zombie with flying, zombie god with flying for 4 mana. You may reveal the first card you draw each turn as you draw it. Whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery card this way, copy that card. You may cast the copy. The copy has 2 less to cast. Another card that, and again it goes into your deck 3 from the top. So another one where you can, once you've got it out, the consistency of having it back again is pretty high, and is copying spells and making those spells cheaper. I think that card is equally, if not more powerful in some ways. Narset's Reversal, I'm sure a card that came to mind for a lot of people. Copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this can be used offensively but also defensively. It doesn't let the spell go off twice, but it gives you the spell back. So if you've got a I don't know, 2-mana spell or a 3-mana counter spell, something like that, playing this would enable you to bring that back again, or could enable you to cast a spell, get it countered, and then copy the countered spell and play it somewhere else or on the same thing. Well, it has to be on a new target, but even so, I think it's an interesting option that copies spells for 2 mana. Spark Double, basically creating a new creature or planeswalker with a +1/+1 counter on it or an additional loyalty. And it doesn't matter if that creature was legendary, you're getting another one of them. Another way to get to, a bit like Protean Thaumaturge, to get another copy of a creature. Because I duplicate, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and you can jumpstart that from the graveyard. So again, another way of getting potentially more of the same creature, and you can potentially, on Cause I Duplicate, copy it with Lutri or another spell, so you've got 3 of the same card out. Obviously Teferi, 3 Fairy is going to feature because you can cast your sorceries at any time and you can return an opposition card. You know, it's got a lot going for it, and that's why it's one of the most powerful cards. So that's a very, very brief summary of my thoughts on Lutri. Where do I think it falls down? Where do I think its biggest problem is? I think it's just the restriction. I've got to be honest with you. With a lot of these companions, yes, you could build a very competitive deck with a Lutri as your companion. There are plenty of great instants and sorceries. It's one of the widest and varied, and loads of directions can be taken. Blue is very powerful. Red is pretty powerful. You're not going to run a red deck wins with Lutri as your companion. You need some of the consistency of some of those cards, but you could do some really powerful things with it. Again, would you play one game where you wipe the floor with somebody and the next game where you lose completely? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think Lutri is a bit of fun to play in game 1 of 3, and then on the bench, on the sideboard, you whack out a few more copies of a few of your stronger cards? Yes, but then what's the point in playing it? A lot of fun to be had with this little otter. A lot of fun. However, again, I don't see it being a hugely competitive card. I think we'll see some funky decks, some different decks, but most top players will not want to build a deck with the inconsistency that Lutri gives. So yes, it's broken in singleton formats, and yes, it was right that they did that, but I just don't know if it's worth the hype in standard, or even in, you know, it's certainly not going to be in like Pioneer, and I don't know about Modern necessarily, but again, I can't imagine it's going to be particularly significant there either. There are better companions for sure, and well, I've decided, as we're on day 6, there's obviously day 7, 8, 9 and 10. After that, I'll do a summary companion video, where I'll go through each of the companions as a top level and potentially even rank them to see which one I think would be the best. In the meantime, send us your thoughts, let me know what you think. Did I nail it with Lutri, or do you think it's better than I'm saying? Have I missed a trick? Is there another type of deck? Obviously it can go in most decks with blue, like I said. Would just be difficult to build. Like, comment, subscribe, do what you like. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow for another one.